Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 16 going on 17 novels of suspense. And as you will hear, I'm about to lose my voice. So if you see me drinking tea or coughing, that is a result of that. But I did not want to miss this day because we are going to be talking to Amy K. Green, whose new book is Haven't Killed in Years. And it is uniquely twisty. It is really scary. It's kind of funny, if I can say that, for sort of a story about a serial killer or two or three. I neglected what I was supposed to be doing in order to read this book. I really couldn't put it down. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but I had to find out what was going to happen. And I had to find out what all the twists were. It's not only a terrific and entertaining book, and as I said, it's kind of funny. It is also really thought-provoking, with themes of justice and power and control and how much we try to please our parents. All those kinds of things go into this. And our author today is Amy K. Green. Are you in Scituate?
I'm in Marshfield, so close enough.
Okay, I live in Newton, so we should have done this just in person.
Well, if we have any technical difficulties, I'll just go outside and scream.
I love it. Good idea.
Try to listen for me.
Through the book. I was screaming through the book.
Yeah.
One of your bios, and this is so random, but one of your bios says you were struck by lightning once. Is that true?
Yes. I mean, unless my mother's lying to me because I was very young, but yeah, it sort of came through the window. She was holding me and it kind of like hit her ring, or was conducted by her ring or whatever. And the story they tell me is that, my parents both kind of like freaked out. Obviously I was, 2 or 3 at the time, and you see your little kid go into a ball, but I was fine. So they like put me to bed basically so that I wouldn't be concerned. And they, called the hospital and they said, well, she either would have died or she's fine. So if she's fine, and I had a regular checkup the next day randomly anyway. So all was well. It really just makes a great story. So
it is a great story. I mean, the idea of that she either would have died or she'll be fine.
Yeah. And said so casually, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess those are the two possibilities, and you clearly didn't die.
Yeah.
I
no superpowers though, or anything. None of the good stuff
that you know of yet. True.
Maybe I need to be struck again.
Or maybe you wouldn't have been a writer without having.
Maybe.
We can go into that. Welcome, you all. This is when I usually talk a little bit about A Mighty Blaze, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want to waste my voice on intro-y kinds of stuff. Amy K. Green, let me just tell you, is the author of the psychological thriller The Prized Girl. That was her previous book. And the brand new Haven't Killed in Years. Do not miss this book. She was born and raised in New England and now splits her time between Boston-ish and Los Angeles, working in production accounting, including the film you may have seen, Little Women. So now you're in Marshfield, which is a suburb of Boston. Are you back from Hollywood?
Yeah, I'm back. I did my time and it was great and it was wonderful. And I just kind of wanted to come back closer to where, a lot of my friends and family are.
That's great. And we are pleased to have you back at home. Tell us a little bit about Haven't Killed in Years.
Sure. So Haven't Killed in Years is the story of Gwen, who we meet on the day that her mother is released from prison. And she breezes by that so casually. You kind of know from the jump that this isn't going to be a normal family dynamic. And then by the end of that day, the end of the first chapter, she goes home and on her doorstep, someone's left her a package. And in that package is a severed arm with a little note card, a clear Amazon mix-up. No, I'm just kidding. With a note card that says, "Hi, Marin." And then, we learn very quickly her real name is Marin Haggerty. She's the daughter of a semi-notorious serial killer named Abel Haggerty. And he was caught when she was 9. And her mother also went to prison for his crimes. And she was sort of whisked away and given a new identity with the hopes that maybe despite a very dark origin, she could have a chance at a normal life. really wishful thinking on that front.
Well, let me interrupt you to say, and we'll go on about the plot of the book, because when and nothing that Amy has said is a spoiler. So given that, all the things that Amy has said, and knowing that none of those things is a spoiler, you can imagine how different this book is and the twists and turns that it takes. When, she acts strangely at the beginning, as you said, she's so la-di-da about her mother getting out of prison. But when the arm appears at the door, I really just looked at the book and thought, what is going on here? Where did the idea for a story about the daughter of a serial killer, and she knows she is,
Yeah.
Where did that idea come from?
At the time, I knew I was ready, to start a new story, and I like writing dark and twisty and weird things, so I knew I had to get into that. And all of my friends at the time were kind of either newly having children or, had toddlers or kids going into kindergarten. And it was so much of the conversation, right? The choices they were making, what is going to be detrimental, what doesn't matter, all this stuff. And I started just thinking like, well, guys, you're not serial killers, okay? Like a little screen time, a little sugar, we'll all be fine as long as you're loving and you're coming from a good place. And then I was like, well, I'd like to explore, like, what if one of you are serial killers? No, I'm just kidding. But that wasn't a wholly unique idea, the story of a child of a serial killer. But I wanted to come at it as the child of a serial killer who knew what was going on, who that was her life, that was her normal. Her father didn't keep anything a secret. He almost made her feel special that she was welcome to come with him, and those sort of things. I just thought that gave it a different twist and would be fun to write.
I mean, it does indeed. And I think it's so cool that the main character's backstory is not a surprise to her, mm-hmm. and not a reveal to us. And I think that's the thing that makes it be incredibly unique and even more interesting, is that, you're talking with your friends about, you're not a serial killer. Well, what if you were? And the sort of psychological effect that would have on a level that you understood, on a level that you thought you understood, and on a level that you didn't understand. And you delve into that really thoughtfully in this.
Well, one of the big choices I remember early on having to make was, how long is she going to be with her father before he's caught, mm-hmm. right? Because that's a totally different story if she was 4 or 16 or, and I settled on 9 because it gives her enough like foundation in his teachings. That's what he would say. I feel like it's more just crazy talk, but
understand. She has a level of agency and intention, yeah. And she would understand him, and she would take in what he said.
Right. And, can start to process and also can keep those memories. She's old enough to have memories, but then she's going to go through those fundamental teen years, sort of newly away from him, no real footing in the world, kind of just coming out of basically a fog. And those two things together basically have created the adult we have now in front of us who, logically knows the difference between right and wrong, like can read, but understands the answer, like, but it doesn't necessarily come naturally to her. It's something she, really struggles with, where her mind goes versus where she thinks it probably should go.
Yeah, no, and I think that's one of the really cool parts about this book. One of the key elements of the story is, will someone find out? Will people find out who she is? And that's sort of the first stage of the book, is that she has changed her name. It's a great story. She's in hiding. She's not in hiding. She's a great story. Has a great story, the backstory of how she became who she is presenting herself to be. And now she is presenting herself to be someone else. And the question is, will someone discover that? And that is sort of the first part of the book. How did you decide how long to take with that?
I just, as I wrote it, kind of naturally, like, okay, like I never set out to write parts, like part 1, part 2, or 3. they just seem to naturally
Oh, that's
present themselves, and I think they just kind of match with big twists or big reveals or big things like that. But I think it was important to really sort of set her up and have her, I mean, she's led like a really isolated, strategically isolated life. She doesn't really want to be perceived. She wants to just be, she wants to do exactly what she needs to do to present as normal as possible and nothing more, nothing less. But someone's provoking her clearly and is, very open to escalating. There is a second arm, there are bloody mess, like this person's going to keep going basically till she plays along. So she's forced to sort of come out of her protective shell and start interacting with these people that might have ties to her past, which has been the thing she's been avoiding for so long.
So clearly her past has come calling, and
Pretty.
she needs to figure out how to deal with that and how it will affect her future. The choices that she makes are interesting. And I do think that one of the things that's so much fun about this book is her voice and her attitude is so, if I say it's relatable, I don't mean that that my father was a serial killer. But we understand her thought process and we really like her. How did you balance the idea of who she is and what she says she did and still figure out a way to get us to really root for her and be on the train with her?
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, what she has going for her is she was so young, right? Like it takes a lot to really hold something against a kid 9 or under, right? Like but I also like the idea that she's basically been hiding herself. She doesn't have a lot of real life human relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Like, her understanding of the world now has come from, watching TV, reading books, reality television. And she doesn't have the same sort of like empathy is not her first go-to. Like she's not super emotional. And that just lets her see the world sort of in a very observational way.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't like, she was raised like most kids are the center of their own universe, right? That's just how we all start, and we try desperately to get away from that, right? As adults. But she was always taught that she was, special like her father in this world of moving pieces, and not in the way that a normal parent teaches their child to love and those sort of things. So all that combined lets her just be really funny about the people she's interacting with and, the way that they act. And it just kind of gives you a free range to sort of strip emotion and just make fun of things as you see fit.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because her background, I mean, you do such a great job with the way that she looks at the world. As you say, observational. It also could be sort of that she's keeping a safe distance from other people. She can't be too close to anyone. And the way that her sort of defense mechanism is to keep people away and to make fun of them in a way and who they are and judge them very strongly about that. But I also think that it's carefully psychologically written, and that she understands that she really loved her father in a way, and that she really felt that he loved her. And that's such a paradox, because how can that be? He was such a bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's definitely very, I would say, nostalgic for those times. Even, she doesn't condone what he did at all. That's she knows that. But, that was her family. He was still the guy picking her up from the bus or going to parent-teacher conferences or taking her ice skating. He maybe then killed someone on the way home. But, like, that gets really mixed in the mind of a child. He was always telling her she was so special and things like that. So, I mean, she hasn't had that from anyone else. So it's complicated. It's tough for her.
And I do think that we're talking about this new book from Amy K. Green called Haven't Killed in Years, about the daughter of a serial killer who is trying to live in anonymity, but someone is clearly on her tail in a very grisly kind of way. It's also such an examination of friendship and love and the need for affection and approval and connection, and how sometimes you can try to have that in a way that's very destructive.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's part of her thing is, right, like she is convinced herself not to have these relationships, right? That they're unsafe for her. She doesn't need them, all these things she's told herself when she's forced to go out and actually interact with people, starts to break down this sort of image she's put on herself. And she's very aware of how manipulative her father is. It's something she understands, but knowing he's manipulative and knowing how he's manipulated you or is potentially still manipulating you is a different story. And I think she starts to get so paranoid, or she's been so paranoid, that what she's doing is because of him, or
And as a result of that, exactly as you're saying, as a result of that, she's not quite sure what she would do. She's not quite sure whether she can even trust herself. And I think that's such a really cool part of this story, is that she's trying as hard as she can to be something. But what if she? And I know we're talking around this, you guys, right? Where I'm trying not to give anything away.
There's a lot of spoilers.
There's a lot of spoilers. You can hear me sort of walking around this, edging and skirting this. But she doesn't know what she's really capable of. And she doesn't know what will happen if she's not really careful about herself. What was that fun to write for you? Was it difficult to write for you?
I mean, it's always difficult to put the whole thing together, right? But the writing her was so fun, right? Because she's aware of this too, that she's thinking dark things, but thinking things and doing things are two different things, right? Which establishing she's aware of this gives you so much freedom to let her think really dark things, sort of like a free pass, because she's saying she doesn't want to do them. She said that up front, right? She got the green light. So it was so fun to write her.
Yeah, and she's a really memorable character. But I think the other thing that I think is so intriguing about this book, and it shows your skill as a writer, is that it's such the desire the desire that so many people have to read about true crime and to listen to true crime podcasts and to sort of revel in the horribleness of other people, and it's so exploitive. How far is that okay, and how do we think about what a victim is and how a victim might feel? We decide we understand how a victim might feel. Can you talk a little bit about the really terrific true crime element of this?
Yeah, we didn't touch on that earlier, but another, when she's trying to figure out who the heck is doing this, she has to take into account the, true crime fans, which maybe that's a light way to describe them. True crime fans to me sounds like, listening to a podcast and folding your laundry, which we'll talk about later. But, she's getting, these are, I guess, like serial killer fanatics, almost, these
fan clubs.
Young men who, are almost idolizing these killers and, giving them traits and attributes that are probably not even real. They're just kind of hero worshiping the worst possible, like whatever has made them kill is some special recipe, which is exactly what her father would like to believe it is. So it's kind of, but I kind of definitely wanted to deal with that world because, like, I feel a lot of guilt about all the true crime stuff I consume, because it gets really mixed with also just like purely fiction crime content, and then you can lose sight of that you're listening to a story about a real person sometimes, and that can just but that to me is so sad. So I was like, I know. Well, I don't know, obviously, but I can appreciate how someone who knows one of these victims personally would feel. Like, I can understand that. But what about somebody like Gwen in my book, who this is her real life, but not in the necessarily sad way that like a regular victim would feel, and that she would just think these guys are idiots, basically, for lack of like a better way to put it. And that kind of makes it's like an exercise to make me feel better about what I feel bad about.
I understand, because we are sort of riveted to the story of someone else's tragedy.
Yeah.
And every psychologist will tell you that that was a generality, but every psychologist will tell you that people listen to true crime because they're thinking, I'm glad this isn't me.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the one who was killed. And I do think that in dealing with true crime, we put ourselves in someone's position, that either we're the victim or the bad guy, or how would it feel, or what we would have done in that situation. So I think you really handle this sort of juggle to walk the line between exploitation of true crime and understanding that, exactly as you say, that these are real people and that we may not really understand how they're going to react to where they are.
Right. And in some cases, I know when I listen to or watch a documentary or something on true crime, and there's an answer, it almost feels like a Band-Aid for the world, right? If they catch the person, right? Like yes. That's a little endorphin rush or something, you know what I mean? And then when it's unsolved, it just feels like the weight of the world. And I don't have a right answer for it, because I don't stop listening to it.
No, I don't, and I think we're not looking. I mean, I think it's interesting because we're not really looking for an answer. And when you think about why people read crime fiction, it's for that same sense of a wrapping up of a mystery, that the crime is solved, that the good guys win, the bad guys get what's coming to them, and there's some justice in some way. Mm-hmm. And you close the book and say, yes, this rarely happens in real life, but now in fiction, it's going to. Mm-hmm. But there is a justice process for every crime in real life, and there are ramifications for every single person that's involved. Mm-hmm. And you tell that so gorgeously in this book, with her father and her mother and her friends and her classmates and her acquaintances now, and the people in the periphery of her story, and people who tried to help her, and what happened. So I think you do a great job of bringing in the whole world of a person who might be a character in a true crime. You've done a great job with world building on this. Did you think about that as a thing?
I mean, yes, and also just innately in her story, right? Like, she is kind of being reintroduced to the world in essence, right? And I mean, just the nature of who she's trying to interact with, she's going to be meeting some pretty interesting or weird or diabolical characters. She's trying to find who's leaving severed arms at her doorstep. She's not going to like the local PTA meeting or something, right? Like, so she is putting herself, she's going outside of a prison. She's, attending weird parties and, things like that. So it kind of just to the story puts you in the different worlds and lets you meet the different people that could theoretically have some sort of ties to the person leaving a severed arm on your doorstep.
Exactly, or two. And also that, how do you as a writer, I mean, it's very, very edgy. And I remember I have a note, and I always write notes in the books. It's an advanced reader copy, so I'm allowed to write in them. That it's funny, and then like it's not that funny, So the roller coaster of emotions that you take readers on is you set it up as being sort of mordantly witty and funny, and then you pull the rug out from under us. Is that an instinctive writing thing to you? That rhythm of your story, the music of your story?
I think so, because if I could just write the funny part the whole time, I probably would. But like, I appreciate that there needs to be some real meat, some real heart, some real layers, or there's no place to make the funny little quip. Right? People have to have feeling. They have to be on board. And I mean, part of Gwen Marin's journey is that she doesn't think she's capable of any of these things, and they blindside her as well, as she starts to feel or worry about other people or things that might seem normal to us, but to her are a little shaking her foundation. So I think it's just the natural ebb and flow of the setup and then, cap someone at the knees and let them climb back up and then chop them down again.
That's what you did to us. That's what you did to us. It is such a cool study, though, of power and control, and not just of her father and her, but her, her mother and her, and all the relationships that she has, even when she was a child, the relationships that she has, and she's aware of this capability of manipulating other people, that she was manipulated and she can do it too. Can you talk a little bit about that, about power and control and approval?
Yeah. I mean, a theme that I have been interested in forever is the idea of the power that comes with being able to make someone feel special or feeling special yourself. And I used to, just say with friends, like I'd watch these like cult documentaries and I'd be like, I think I might be cult susceptible, because although from the outside, like you're like, okay, this is so obviously a cult, there's a million red flags, but there's something about if a person is looking you in the eyes and telling you all these things you haven't heard before, and that you're like, no wonder they get people to do crazy things, it's powerful. And the idea that she knows her father has this skill, and if he's chosen, if he's seeking someone out, if he's talking to someone, if he's working his magic, that very well could be the person who's doing this. It's a very real option.
And she also understands how he does it. And so he's sort of taught her inadvertently to do it herself. She looks at her life sometimes and says, my father would do this, so I'm going to do this. Or, I'm doing this. This is what my father would do. Again, back to your initial premise about, your parents aren't serial killers, you'll be fine, you can let them watch TV. If they are, what would they learn from you? That's the coolest thing about this story, really, Amy, is that you've taken this relationship and weaponized it to the nth degree. But we, as every one of us as a kid, we get that need for approval.
Right. Like, we all are taking some combination of what we learned from our parents and what the real world came in and sort of mixed together. And this is not a spoiler, but early on, she's talking to another character. His name is Dominic, and she wants some information out of this guy, right? He's on her radar, but you're in her head as you're having just this very like benign kind of little flirtation conversation, but she's going through the like, oh, great, he asked me what I do for work. Like, now we're going to have to do 3 comments and I'm going to have to circle that back around. You know what I mean? Like, you see how calculated she is, because that's how she was taught to get information that she needed out of people.
I mean, you're bringing all this back and I remember remarking on that when I was reading it. And I know you all that we're not being very clear about the plot of this book. And Amy has written this book that we just can't tell you about. What am I supposed to do?
Just trust us. Just trust us.
Just trust us about this. It is edgy and dark and funny and really thought-provoking. I mean, I have thought about it several times, many times since I read it. I do want to know, though, when you went to your agent or editor, how did you pitch this book? What did you say you were going to write?
Well, I had already written a draft of it, and I just said, I wrote something else. Read it, because I'm horrible at pitching, and I'm dealing with that on my new book that I'm working on, where I just kept trying to explain it. And I'm like, I was like, I'm going to send you the first 100 pages. If you don't mind, that would really help. And we did. That got me and my editor over a big hump, because I'm just like, I'm not doing a great job at this. So
it's the hardest thing to do, isn't it? Because you know what the story is about, but then you start telling the plot, and that's not really what it's about.
Yeah. And I love just having a lot of twists and reveals. Like, so like,
did you know?
I don't want to ruin anything before you read it the first time, but like, if I don't ruin it, then you're gonna think it's a big stinker. So like, how do we find the balance?
So there are a lot. Let us just say there are lots of twists and reveals. So just keep reading, because you never know what is going to happen on the next page. Again, as Amy and I both say, trust us on this.
Yeah.
Trust us.
Trustworthy, I think.
What are you like as a writer? Are you a happy writer? Do you claw through the pages? Are you thinking, oh yes, this is really good? How are you when you're writing?
I was trying to think of how to describe it, and I feel like it's kind of like, remember like Magic Eye posters, or like, do you know what I'm talking? In order to, it would be like there was a picture,
right. And you
kind
let
of had
your
to,
eyes, yes,
blur out. I feel like that's how I write. If I'm too like in reality, I'll just not get anything done. I'll just stare at my computer. But if I can get in that like blur phase, then I'll just like write like crazy. So I'm very jealous of the writers who can write like 15 minutes, like while I was waiting for my coffee or something. I don't know how you do it. You're very gifted, but it's just not for me.
No, I hear you about this Magic Eye thing. I think this is really intriguing because some people call it the zone, where you're
probably a better way to say it.
Well, I'm going with Magic Eye. I think that's perfect because you do have to let your mind go.
Mm-hmm.
You can't try. Sometimes
that's what I always say. Never try. No,
but sometimes when I dictate, I just use the dictation software, and sometimes I just close my eyes and just say the book, and it feels like it gets me so much closer to the person because I'm not really me. Amy and I think we're talking about the same thing here.
I think so. I think it's like it helps with the authenticity, right? You don't become yourself writing these different people. You kind of become as if your brain is different than the hands, and you're like living in the story in the moment.
100%. I was at an interview with Stephen King and Lee Child. I know, it was like on Olympus, and they each said separately and without having discussed it before that when they were at their best, it really felt as if they were just transcribing something that did not come from their brain, but that came from somewhere else. Isn't that so interesting?
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal, right? It's too bad we have all that other time where we're trying to force it. But when you hit those moments, it's magic.
Yeah, and that's that's good fuel for keeping going.
Totally.
Well, this is I haven't even mentioned all of you people who are here. Lori Hernandez and Shannon Hansen and Renee Herskowitz is here. Robin Stoll. I'm about to lose my voice. You know, that's Sue Street. And this is great that you are Pat Tipanaro. This is wonderful to see you all here today. Lori says, Severed Arms at My Doorstep. Also a good title. Betty Fellows. I know Betty Fellows will want to know, has this always been the title?
Nope. This is one of my favorite questions because I am horrible at coming up with titles. For a very long time, it had this great title. It was Untitled Book 2. And then for a while, it was called You Started It, but that's too close to the book He Started It, which is a great book. I recommend it. It's not the point. And then it was called...
That's Samantha Downing. Samantha
Downing, yeah. You'll Regret It, which is actually what it was. The sale was announced as, and that only came after emails with some people on my team just basically throwing out anything you could think of, every combination of every kill, murder, dark, girl word you could think of. And then we had settled on You'll Regret It, and then it went, to the art team. And when they started putting together, the whole cover, they're like, it's not quite right. And Haven't Killed in Years was one of the titles on the many emails, and they threw that on there, and everybody was like, yes, okay, moving on. Wonderful.
I mean, I can imagine You'll Regret It has that apostrophe in You'll. That's hard to make it work. I mean,
well, I've learned also having killed in the title is not great for like TikTok and things like that. I get banned or like shadow banned all the time because you can't say anything about serial killers. You can't. So I'm trying to work around it, but lesson learned on that front.
This is stuff you all wouldn't know unless you came to Crime Time, right? The real inside stuff about writing and publicity and promotion. It is so marvelous to have you here today. I'm sorry about my cold. You all forgive me. My husband is in the other room saying, I'm sniffing, I'm sniffing. So this is how our lives are today. Robin says, heat up a dram of whiskey and honey to soothe the throat. I'll still be sick, but I won't care, right?
Right.
That's what you're going for. But I didn't want to miss this, Amy. I am such a fan of this book. It is really quite creepy and really quite special, and surprisingly, as I keep saying, surprisingly thought-provoking and very touching, as a matter of fact, and funny as well. So I know we have questions from the audience. Let's take a couple of questions. And you know that we're going to spin the wheel of fun at the end to win a copy of Haven't Killed in Years. I've left out everything, you all. It's a tragic day. We will give away a copy of Haven't Killed in Years from Amy's publisher. I am keeping this one. So you will get your new one. So we will spin the wheel of fun at the end of the show to see who wins. Lori says, I knew one serial killer, married with 2 kids, had a mobile fix-it biz, including repairing copy machines as the public defender's office where I worked. Yes, at the time. Wow. Okay.
Are we allowed to ask Lori questions?
Yeah. So, no, let's go back to Lori and then we'll put up Kathy. So when you were writing Abel, Gwen/Marin's father, did you do a lot of research into serial killers?
I call it absorption instead of research, because it's like I feel like I've seen so many different things and kind of just becomes a thought pattern. But I purposely didn't want him to touch too closely to any specific real serial killers, because it's all from her perspective. He's all from her perspective, and to him, he's well-rounded, and that's just one small thing. And a lot of times these famous serial killers, you don't know how much of that is even true, and they've been boiled down to these really, if he was, the Night Strangler of Mississippi or something, it makes it just like so specific, and just his own daughter wouldn't think of him that way. So that was kind of my strategy.
That's really genius. Because that's the line that we were talking about, is that people who listen to true crime podcasts or read about true crime are given a created image of a thing, of a person. But if you really lived with that person, that's not how you would think of it. And you delve so gorgeously into to Gwen/Marin's psyche about how she sees her father. And that's what makes this book be so unique and special. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Who else has a question? Kathy, hey Kathy, says, how long did it take to write this story?
It's a great question. I originally wrote the first draft of this probably like 6 years ago now, and then it kind of got shelved for a long time. So I don't have a real answer on that. I would say on and off over 5 or 6 years, but actual writing, some parts longer than others, right? When you're in the zone, and it went through a pretty hefty revision to part 2, which of course we cannot say anything about. So I wish I had a better answer, but I always talk about, like, when you're writing, you're not thinking about talking about writing. You're thinking about, like, oh, please let this become a book someday. And then you're like trying to remember, all the parts about writing. And when 5 or 6 years passes, it's tough.
But I think the book appears when the time is right for the book to appear. There couldn't be a better time for this book to come out. It just hits every great element on every level.
And I think, we're looking for, I won't speak for everyone, but looking for some like lightness to our darkness, I would say. Like, we're not losing our appetite for really dark and salacious stories, but it helps if you can close the book before you go to bed and not see things in the shadows sometimes.
Yeah, again, and I think that you juggled that beautifully in this, because the way the book ends, and again, no spoiler at all, but the way the book ends, you're like, oh gosh, and then and then you're fine. This is not a nightmare-inducing, not a nightmare-inducing book. Again, an amazing tightrope walk for you to do that. One last question. Let's take one last question. Perfect question, Kathy. Are you working on book 3?
Yes, and it's funny because I could talk about the writing process on that one because I'm in it. I'll say it's another, I can't say too much about it. I don't even know if it'll ultimately be book 3, but it's a thriller. I'll tell you what's inspired me very loosely is that I had to drive cross country a few times, just relocating and work and stuff like that. And I was really fascinated about how you could just be driving for, miles and miles and miles where there's literally nothing, not a sign, not an exit. And then all of a sudden there would be like a gas station or a little restaurant or something. And I just couldn't stop thinking about like, where are these people coming from? Like, you're at such a, like, thousands of people are driving by, anybody in the world, and you live clearly in a very remote place, and just started to try to play with that dynamic a little. So I know that's very vague, but
I know that's very Twilight Zone to me.
yeah.
Because anything could happen and anyone could be there.
And if something does happen, are you looking within the small town? Are you chalking it off to anybody and everybody who drove by in the past week? It just seemed like there was a lot to play with there.
Definitely so. And so will that be out next year, or do we know?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Hopefully.
You'll come back with that whenever that comes out. It sounds really creepy and really Amy Greenish. I have because anything could happen, and it's a quirky perspective of looking at the world, and I think that's what you've captured so wonderfully in this book. Congrats. Brenda says, good to know, not nightmare inducing. Yeah, just when you open the door for your Amazon packages, though, as Amy says, be aware of the packaging.
All right, the box is not sealed though, so that's a giveaway. If the box is unsealed on your doorstep, be worried.
Call someone. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want one of you to get a chance to win this book, and the rest of you know what to do. Run, click, click, click. Get Haven't Killed in Years, which looks beautiful. Oh, this has a apostrophe as well. There's so much for that theory. So much for that theory. Oh, you all. Anyway, let's spin the wheel of fun and get me out of this, and we will draw for the winner. And the winner is Lori Hernandez. Lori won the
one who knows the serial killer.
Yeah. The one who knows the serial killer. Okay, this will be very comforting to you, or very relatable to you. Lori Hernandez, you are the winner of Haven't Killed in Years. You know what to do. Send me your email. We will get Amy to get her publicist to send you a copy of this book, because I am keeping this one. The rest of you, it's easy to order this book on any kind of online process, or you can go to your local independent bookstore and buy this, or go to your library and take it out. It really helps to keep a book in circulation if you take a book out from your local library. So authors love that. So we don't care how you get this book. Just run, click, click, click. Get Haven't Killed in Years by Amy K. Green. Amy, thank you for putting up with my cold and my sickness brain. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. And if you hadn't told everybody, I don't even think they would have picked up on it.
Well, I don't know. My voice sounds really funny, but thank you for that. Thank you for that vote of confidence. Speaking of vote of confidence, next week at 4 p.m. ET, Lori's saying, yay, as well it should be. Next week at 4 p.m. ET, The Award by Matthew Pearl. Amy, you will love this book. You will all love this book. It is about a struggling writer, and it is about how far you would go to have a best-selling novel. Look at that cool cover.
Yeah.
It takes place in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Oh. It is terrific. Matthew Pearl will be here next week at 4 p.m. ET, and I hope you all will too. Amy, if you're ever in Boston or doing book events, call me. Let's do something together. I would love to do that.
I have to tell you, I got a signed copy of your book from the next chapter in Quincy. So we're running in the same circles.
Oh, we definitely have to continue to do that, and maybe even closer. That would be great. Thank you for being here, Amy. Thank you all for being here today. I love seeing you all. I'm never going to stop thinking about the magic eye, and I will see you next week. Remember, it is always safe inside a book.